The rain had started just as Daniel Cross's private jet touched down, thin silver lines streaking across the runway like a warning he chose to ignore. Because after 7 years of relentless ambition, hostile takeovers, sleepless nights, and headlines that crowned him the youngest self-made millionaire in the country, he was finally coming home, not to celebrate, not to boast, but to rest, to see the city that had shaped him, and most of all, to surprise the woman who had stood beside him before the money, before the suits, before the world learned his name. Daniel didn't announce his arrival, didn't send assistants ahead, didn't even book a luxury car, choosing instead to walk through the older part of the city where cracked pavements remembered his footsteps from another life, where corner shops still smelled of dust and tea, where alleyways whispered stories no one bothered to hear anymore. And it was there, between a closed bakery and a flickering street lamp, that he saw her, a small figure curled against the brick wall, rain soaking through thin fabric, hair matted to her face, arms wrapped around herself as if holding together what the world had torn apart. And at first he almost walked past, because the mind resists pain it cannot explain. But then she lifted her head just enough for the streetlight to catch her eyes, and Daniel's breath left him in a soundless collapse, because those eyes, dulled by exhaustion, yet still impossibly familiar, belonged to Emma, his wife, the woman who once laughed so loudly neighbors complained, the woman who used to wait up late with burnt coffee just to see him smile, now abandoned like refuse in an alley that smelled of rust and rain. His umbrella fell from his hand as he crossed the distance in seconds, dropping to his knees without caring who saw, without caring what his tailored coat touched, calling her name like a prayer he had forgotten how to say. And Emma flinched at the sound, fear flashing before recognition, because pain teaches you not to hope. But then her fingers trembled as they touched his sleeve, as if confirming he was real, and when she whispered, "Daniel," it broke something open inside him that no boardroom victory ever had, and he wrapped his arms around her, feeling how light she had become, how bones pressed where warmth used to live, and anger, sharp, focused, terrifying, rose in him not like fire but like ice. Because someone had done this. Someone had taken the woman he loved and discarded her, and as rain soaked them both he demanded answers softly, the way one does when standing on the edge of something irreversible. Emma tried to speak, but words tangled with tears, and it took minutes before fragments emerged. How after he left to build his empire, promises turned into delays, delays into distance. How his success drew vultures into their lives. How a powerful local family she once trusted offered help, then control, then threats. How lies were planted so carefully even she began to doubt herself. How one night she was told Daniel had signed papers, that he wanted her gone, that she was an embarrassment to his new life, and before dawn she was pushed out with a single bag and a warning never to return. And Daniel listened without interrupting, because every sentence rewrote the past 7 years with a cruelty he could barely comprehend, realizing that while he was fighting for market dominance, she had been fighting simply to exist. And when she finished, expecting disbelief or anger, Daniel did something that shocked even her. He pulled out his phone, not to call security, not to summon a driver, but to record, to document her words with shaking hands, because he understood something vital in that moment. Power means nothing if it hides, wealth means nothing if it whispers, and justice means nothing unless it is seen. He stood lifting Emma gently as if she were glass, and hailed a passing cab instead of his armored car, because he wanted witnesses, wanted the city to notice, wanted rumors to start not in boardrooms but on streets. And as the driver stared in disbelief at the soaked billionaire holding a woman, wrapped in his coat, Daniel met his eyes and said calmly, "Take us to the nearest hospital. And don't rush, people need to see this." And during that slow ride through rain-lit streets, Daniel made calls that would ripple outward like shockwaves. Lawyers awakened, journalists tipped anonymously, old contacts warned to watch the news by morning, while Emma drifted in and out of consciousness, clutching his hand as if afraid the world would steal him again. And when hospital doors swung open and cameras somehow already waited, Daniel did not shield his face or hers, instead turning slightly so lenses could see the truth etched into Emma's bruises, her hollow cheeks, the unmistakable evidence of neglect. And when reporters shouted questions, Daniel answered only one, his voice steady, dangerous in its restraint. "This is my wife. She was abandoned like trash. And tonight, the city will learn who did it and why." And as doctors rushed Emma away, Daniel stood alone under harsh white lights, rainwater pooling at his feet, A man transformed not by loss but by clarity, because he had returned home a millionaire, but he was about to become something far more unsettling, a husband with nothing left to lose and every resource in the world to expose the truth. And as sirens echoed outside and headlines began to write themselves, Daniel looked directly into a camera and spoke, not to the press but to the people watching at home, the ones who believed power always protects itself. And he said, "If you think money buys silence, watch what happens next." And in that moment the city felt it, a shift, a quiet understanding that a storm had begun not in the skies, but in the conscience of a man who refused to let love be buried in an alley ever again. If this story moved you, shocked you, or made you feel something real, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because this is only the beginning, and what happens next will change everything.